Welcome to the Free Your Voice podcast, a place where we dive deep into the art of public speaking and how to build a voice that truly connects. I'm your host, Wolfgang Habauer, and today I'm excited to welcome someone who describes himself as a recovering child actor, and he's one of the most dynamic communication coaches out there. He works with entrepreneurs and leaders to speak with impact, to tell their stories with confidence, and helps coaches craft unforgettable talks. It's a real pleasure to have you here, Will Greenblatt. Hi, welcome.
Th- Thank you so much, Wolfgang. I've been such an admirer of yours and your posts and your humor and your energy and just everything on LinkedIn for a while. So, yeah, this was only a matter of time, and I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah, it was a matter of time, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. It's really great to have you here. And Will, but I need to ask you, and I read about it, but you have to tell me, how did you come up with the expression recovering child actor?
This came from an
Where does this come
exercise.
from?
Yeah, it came from an exercise with that Chris Do. I learned about it from Chris Do, who I assume you know. Do you know Chris Do? Know of his work?
You mean the
Uh,
the artist, the artist?
y- yeah, the personal brand guy on YouTube and Instagram. He's got a LinkedIn presence.
Ah, okay.
You know about
No.
him?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. No.
He's
Help me
also
out.
an artist. Yeah. So he's an amazing follow. If you don't follow him or know him from his YouTube videos or his company, The Future, he's an amazing resource for coaches, for creatives, for solopreneurs, anyone trying to like build a business. He has advice about sales,
Okay.
but he's kind of become a personal brand guy in the last few years. And he had a
Okay.
YouTube video which talks about an exercise called finding your two-word brand. And the way that you do this is you
Okay.
take something that is potentially you're embarrassed about, potentially something that is shameful, and you turn it into a superpower. And so
Okay.
some examples he gave were Tom Ross, who is the community guy. He's like the big guy who talks about community online. His two-word, he had a three-word brand, was proud people pleaser. So the idea was being a people pleaser is something that he was maybe embarrassed about, but by leaning into his people pleasing tendencies, he
Yeah.
actually created a great community because he was obsessed with making sure everybody had a great experience. So proud people pleaser became his two or three word brand. It's supposed to be two, but mine is three as well, so I get it. Another example was an old woman who spoke about branding. She was maybe in her 70s. And she called herself the brand mother, as like, a play on the grandmother, because people were
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
fun of her for her age. And she's like, fuck you, I'm going to own it. And she owned it. And then it became this superpower, being the brand mother. And so it was
Yeah.
such an
Yeah.
interesting exercise. So I was like, okay, what is that for me? And the thing I was always embarrassed about growing up, once I started to become aware of it, was that I was always performing to get people to like me. I was an
Okay.
actor, and that made me kind of crack jokes and have big energy and try to be the center of attention and also like change who I was to get to like if you were kind of a person who was laid back and chill, I'd kind of calm down. And if you were the person who was like big energy, I would match your energy. And I would just sort of like change myself for whoever I was with. But I also realized that that also helped me be a good communicator because it made me very aware of how people were feeling and how people were thinking and how
Of
people
course.
were responding to me. So there's something good about it, but it's also something I kind of want to work on. So recovering child actor is like recovering alcoholic. I will always be a performer by nature and by training. But if I can
Yeah.
learn to not perform at all times and focus on
Yes.
being a bit more myself, I can take what's good about my performance background and use that, but also dig deep and try to find who I really am. So that's the meaning behind recovering child actor is like owning my past, but also trying to work on it and realize that I'm still in recovery from this childhood I had.
Wow, that's a really cool explanation. And love it because it has this honesty in it. And it's also cool to get into a conversation with people because it's something, I mean, people, if they don't know you, I heard there are some people on this planet who still don't know you.
Many, yeah.
You can explain them your past about
Yeah.
being a child actor. So actually, it's a great thing. I really love it.
Yeah, it's like my life story in 3 words almost. So I find it very
Exactly.
useful. And people
Yeah,
constantly tell me, like, they're like, hey, I added you on LinkedIn because I loved that description. So it's definitely resonating with people. Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool. It's nice. Nice. Um, yeah, and as you with your work as a public speaking coach, I mean, you help people to perform better on stage, to write better speeches. But what you lately are focusing on is more a thing you call signature workshop.
Yes.
Um, can you explain to me what it is, how it works, who are your clients?
So I kind of have two clients. One is event bookers and corporate buyers who will bring in speakers and workshop facilitators. So I'm in the game
Mhm.
too with my clients. I'm constantly looking for work. I'm finding gigs. I'm finding the best ways to source paid speaking gigs. And I almost always get brought in to do workshops. The reason I came up with this signature workshop offer, which is teaching what I do as a speaker and a coach, but I teach this process of going to corporate buyers and event bookers and getting booked for a workshop, and I teach that to other coaches who want to start speaking. And the reason I focus on the workshop is because whenever I was at conferences, speaking at events, speaking at corporate learning days, the keynote speaker was always famous, or they were a big name company representative. They would be the VP at Microsoft or the global director of
Yeah,
Ericsson or whatever.
yeah.
And that's the keynote speaker, right? But then the workshop
Yeah.
speakers were people just like me. They were just the founder of a small agency, or they were a solopreneur, or they were a coach, or they were a professional. And all they had to do was just have something to teach that people would find useful in their business.
Hmm.
And so there's different words for it, like training or workshop or breakout, but it's all kind of like more teaching versus speaking. And so
Yeah.
I love that because I have a teaching background as well. So I'm really focused on education. I know that education works much better when it's interactive and when the students have an opportunity to put it into practice and to apply it.
Of
So
course.
it was just a natural fit for me. And I realized that often my workshops would get better feedback than the keynotes. So I was like, I think there's something here. And I just started looking at my own signature workshop. What's the structure? How do I do it? Why is it successful? And I kind of reverse engineer it and engineered it and made a structure for it. And then I just take everything that I do in my work to find these gigs, and I teach that to my clients. So I'm kind of like a guinea pig. I'm out there speaking and finding workshops, and then I teach coaches to do the same thing.
Okay. And what's your ideal structure? I mean, don't have to reveal every
No, I'm
secret you
happy to.
have, but
Yeah, I'm happy to.
just in general. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my perfect structure, and there's some flexibility in here, but this is like the points you want to hit. The first thing you do is
Yeah.
tell your story. You start with your story. Now you can have a little opener before the story to hook people's attention, but you don't, and you can also just say, "Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited." Or you can say, "Can I get a show of hands? Who here in the room is a entrepreneur? Who here is a whatever?" You can start with a little icebreaker or something that's optional. But the first main thing you launch into once you're starting, after you've given your little intro or opener, is your story. And I teach a very specific structure to this story, which is called your 3-act origin story. You may have seen me post
Okay.
about this on LinkedIn. I don't shut up about
Yes.
it a lot because it's one of the things I teach the most. The 3-act origin story is the quickest way to help people understand, why are you here? Why do you do this work? Why do you care? And why is it personal? And why are you qualified as well? So you start with your childhood origin, which is Act 1. So for me, I say I started life as an actor. I started my career at age 7. I started acting in movies and TV shows. Then you come to Act 2, which is your youth awakening. And that's the turning point where you started moving from your old life towards the one you live in now and the one that means you care about this work. For me,
Okay.
that was my transition out of acting and into the world of teaching and entrepreneurship because of the death of my brother. So my younger brother died when I was a teenager, And that sent me down a really bad path of drugs and alcohol and depression. And I wasn't dealing with my grief, and I wasn't going to therapy. So by the time I got to theater school and went through theater school, I just was a mess, and I had a terrible time. And so I decided to quit acting. That led me to Spain to teach English, and then later to China to start a school as a co-founder, which led me into entrepreneurship. So when I came back to Canada, I come into act 3 of the origin story, which is the adult choice. And that's what you say, so I decided to start this company, or so I decided to become a whatever. And so for me, I decided to become a public speaking coach using my acting and my teaching backgrounds to help entrepreneurs and executives learn to tell their story. And then you can kind of go into, since then, I've won this award, I've achieved this thing, I've made this much money, I've worked with these clients. Then you can start to list your accolades, because you've built some connection with the audience with your story. So then it's not about bragging, it's about, hey, I've been through some stuff and I've come out the other side, and I've done these great things since. And it becomes more of a rags to riches story versus a bragging about what you've done. And it works so much better than just listing your resume. And then that gets you into the main talk. So that's the speaker story, the 3-act origin story. So you give them your story, and then you say, and here's what I want to tell you today. And then you give them your big idea. And the big idea is like, this is what I say that maybe only a couple other people think, or maybe we're in the minority, or we're in the majority, but we're fighting another faction, which is like, this is what I strongly believe. And if you take away one thing from this thing today, it's this. And you give them your big idea. And it's very important that you have this, because otherwise they might leave your talk not quite knowing what it was about. So you want to be explicit about this and say, if you remember one thing today, I want it to be this. And that takes work, that thing. But you really want to be clear on that.
Absolutely.
Which is like, for you, Wolfgang, you might say, I believe it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. I don't know if you believe that, but that might be it. Or it might be like, your voice is the most powerful asset you can develop, or something like that. Or, most people get public speaking all wrong. They think it's about this, but it's actually about this. And so you kind of find your thing that you want to stake your claim on. Once you give them the big idea, now you have to kind of prove it. So we've got the big idea, and then what I call your main talk. And your main talk is just about proving your thesis. So if it's why, how do you know it's true? Do you have any science? Do you have any personal experience? Do you have any stories? Do you have any client success? What can you show us to prove to prove why that you believe this? And then you teach them something, which I call the main exercise. So the main exercise is your best framework, your 7 tips, your 5 steps, whatever framework you can teach them. Yeah. And it's like so that they can walk away having learned something new. I teach my 3-act origin story structure, the one I laid out for you. I have a whole workshop on that. So that's what I teach in my signature workshop, is I teach them that structure, and I dive deep on it. I show them what each section should have. I give examples, and then you give them time to do it. So then I say, okay, everybody, we get into breakout groups, or they go off alone, or they get into pairs, and they come up with their 3-act origin story. Then we come back together, and then we role play it, or they read it out loud, and we discuss it as a group. So then that's the main exercise. And then the final 2 pieces are Q&A. It's really important for a signature workshop that your audience get a nice, juicy Q&A. I had a workshop yesterday that I didn't give them the Q&A for because we ran out of time, and it was a real missed opportunity. The feedback was great. People loved it, which is awesome. But I really wish I had given them the time for the Q&A, because there's always such valuable stuff that happens in the Q&A, because the audience gets to ask questions you wouldn't even know they had, right, when you're creating your content. Also, you, as the workshop facilitator, get so much valuable data about your audience. What do they struggle with? What do they want to know? Exactly. When you get the same question a few workshops in a row, then you go, okay, I should write a blog post about this. I should start posting about this on LinkedIn. I can make it a whole workshop. I can make it a whole offer. You get this invaluable data from that Q&A. And then the audience feels heard and seen, and they feel like they got their money's worth because they got their personal question answered.
Absolutely.
So the long Q&A, and then the final piece is the call to action, where you say, if you want to continue this work, here's what I do. I'm a coach. I have a consulting business. We sell a product, whatever you want to pitch. So you've given 97% value, and then just at the end you can make your ask and say, hey, if you want to work with me, if you want to learn more, and it can be light too. If you're not sure what you want to sell, or if you just want people to follow you on LinkedIn, or if you want subscribers to your newsletter, it can be really easy. You just tell them what you do and where they can go if they want to learn more about you, or if they want to follow up with you, or if they want to purchase your product or your course. What I use is a tool called Talkadot. Do you use Talkadot?
No, I haven't used it
Okay.
yet.
It's super good. Yeah, it's a tech tool by R.L. Moody and his team, and it creates a QR code for you that you put on your slides, and people can just scan it on their phone and then fill out a short survey and then download your slide deck or
it's for giving
an
feedback,
ebook.
right?
It's for getting feedback, but also there's a question that says, do you know anyone who books speakers? Yes or no? Do you book speakers? Yes or no? Would you refer the speaker? And so it's also like a lead generation machine. It's a fantastic tool. Yeah. So I just put my QR code and I say, if you want the slide deck, and I also sell my book, or not sell, but I give away my book and I give away an ebook. So I say, if you want that PDF, please just take 2 minutes, fill out the survey. It would really help me. You'll get the free gift. And then you can give me your email or not, because they can also opt out of the emails. So it's really good, and then it collects all the data for you. And then the final piece, I'm talking about Talkadot. I don't make any money from saying this. I just love the tool. They have a public profile with all your lifetime feedback, and you can also fill out other information about like where you've spoken, and you can put videos and pictures. So it's kind of like a speaker's page, and you can send this to event bookers in the future to say, look at my feedback, look how well this workshop's being received. And it's super helpful. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that was awesome. Great structure. But I have a question, because my biggest struggle, or not my biggest struggle, but the biggest struggle of my clients usually is when we talk about a presentation, when we talk about a speech, motivation, whatever, any kind of speech. I do the same thing. We look for this one big idea, this one goal we are going to talk about. And this is where people actually mostly struggle, because when you have that, everything else gets clear. I mean, you know what stories to use, what kind of tutorial, whatever you're going to show. But how do you help people to find that one big idea?
So I just use Vincent Pieri's. Vincent Pieri came up with a LinkedIn post. He's a mutual friend of ours, and if anyone doesn't follow Vince, you definitely should on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But he had a post that I loved, and I link it to him in my worksheet, because I'm like, he has a great breakdown for this. But the way you come up with your big idea, he calls it a differentiated point of view, or a differentiated POV. His idea is you take a status quo, then you take your disagreement with the status quo, and then you put it through like a little formula he has to make it sound catchy. So he's got like 5 different, he's got like repetition, rhyming, reversal. He's got all these ways of like making it sound catchy. But the basic idea is, it's like, the status quo is this, my differentiated point of view is this. And to me, that's a great way of coming up with your big idea. And there's lots of great examples that I found over the years, but you really just want to think like, here's what most people get wrong about my industry, or we're moving in the wrong direction, here's where I think we should be doing instead, or people are focusing on the wrong thing, here's what I think you should focus on, or the single best thing you could do, or the most important thing you could do. It's like flipping wisdom on its head, or just saying, hey, here's what I really believe is important, and you're going to prove it, but you just want to come up with that really bold, strong statement. And you don't want to be controversial for no reason. You don't want to be like, what I'm realizing, the main thing is that,
I know what you mean.
Science is bullshit. Don't listen to science. You're just like, okay, well, that's controversial, but stupid.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't want to be controversial for no reason, but you really want to think like, what is something you strongly believe in that is not obvious? Because if it's obvious, then everybody's saying the same thing, and you don't stand out. You want to find something that's both true and real, and you strongly believe, but is a bit different and unique to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's giving a new perspective. That's why people pay you at the end of the day. To get the information,
Yeah.
they can watch a YouTube video.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all out there. That's what I always say. You can read everything about public speaking. You can watch YouTube videos on public speaking. You can buy courses on public speaking. But at the end of the day, it's the perspective you're giving and your
Yeah.
perspective you're giving on that topic. In my case, on your case, right? When we're talking about
Yeah.
public speaking or whatever you are coaching, right? And what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes coaches are doing when they prepare their workshops? What is failing when you work with your clients? And I mean, I guess some of them, they have their workshop already and they just want to improve it, right? What do you see?
Too much information. That's the
Okay.
biggest problem. Public speaking is an exercise in restraint. How little can you say to get your point across? Because
Yes.
the audience, like cognitive overload is such a problem, especially in our modern society. We get so much information just fucking, all day. If you throw a bunch of things to remember at the audience, their brain will just turn off eventually because they just go, I'm sure this is important, but I can't hold 17 things in my head at once. So if you
Exactly.
can just,
Yes.
and not just ideas, but words, how few words can you say to get your point across? This is what good writers learn. Good copywriters, I should say, learn this. This is what good marketers learn. This is what you have to learn when you're giving a pitch to investors, especially if you have only 60 seconds or 3 minutes. I used
Yeah.
to I used to help a lot of entrepreneurs with their investor pitches, and that was one of the biggest things we worked on is say less. Say less.
Yes.
Don't say, we are trying to create a product that will, in theory, potentially help no, you just say, we're building this,
Yes.
you know? And
Yes.
it's stronger. Anyways, it sounds more confident if you cut down the words, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is why people usually use that kind of words is they are not 100% sure of the message.
That's
That's the
right.
thing
I
behind
agree.
it. That's what I see. Yeah.
I totally agree.
And it helps you definitely. Yeah. And the moment you are clear, you don't have any problem to say it that way.
Yeah. I
But
think,
yeah,
public speaking is an exercise in restraint. I've thought about this a lot, like what I just said. I've thought about it a lot.
yes.
I believe it strongly. So I don't have to say, when people are speaking in public, oftentimes they really just use too many words. No, say less. And that's it. Say less. Yeah. The second problem I
Yeah.
think I see is people confuse boring with natural in terms of the delivery.
Yeah.
So people either
Explain
go,
a little bit more. That's interesting. Yes.
so people don't want to sound fake on stage. That's a big fear people have. Stage fright is a big
Okay.
fear as well. But once people kind of get over the basics of stage fright where they're like, okay, I can get up there, then their fear becomes, I don't want people to think I sound unnatural or rehearsed or robotic or fake in some way.
Yeah.
So what they do is they don't practice because they want to sound natural, and then they also
Yeah.
don't work on bringing up the energy. And so
Yeah.
two big problems. One is if you don't practice, you won't be as confident. You won't have edited for shitty ideas that don't belong there and extra words that don't belong there. And you just it won't be as good. It's a skill. If you practice it more, you'll be better. If you practice it less, you'll be worse. That's how it works.
Yeah.
And then the second part about not bringing up the energy, you know this, I know this. It takes work to keep an audience's attention. It takes effort. It takes
Absolutely.
volume. It takes facial expressiveness. It takes physical expressiveness. It takes varying your tone. It takes shifting the energy. It takes, and when you get off stage, you should be fucking exhausted because that means you've given your energy to the audience and they've received it. The harder you work, the less hard they have to work to pay attention.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to
Absolutely.
understand. But that doesn't mean you have to push and shove and go, but it just means you have to work really hard to be present and to just elevate elevate your natural way of being, but to show the audience, I care about you paying attention. Because if they get a sense that you're bored or flat or dull, they're just going to go, oh, I guess this doesn't really matter. And they'll go on their phone, or they'll think, oh, maybe I should go to the sushi place at lunch. I didn't try the salmon last time. They'll just think about something else. So
absolutely, or they just grab their phone.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And
Exactly.
you're competing with this at all times nowadays. Nobody leaves their phone anywhere.
That is what I say. You stole that from me.
Yeah.
I always have my phone. Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You're competing the whole day.
You have to be more interesting. Sorry, I was just going to say, you have to be, as the speaker, more interesting than their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their Instagram, their email, their texts, their WhatsApp. Yes. You have to be more interesting than all that. And if you think you're going to do that by getting up there and going, thanks to Kristen for having me. Today we're going to talk about research.
Yeah.
No way.
Bye, Will.
Yeah. See ya.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think the biggest issue is here, it's also people, I mean, they prepared, or maybe they didn't. We don't know. But let's think they prepared. But it's also getting into the mood, like emotionally, before the speech. This is what I notice, and this is also what I teach. It doesn't start when you go on stage. And it's not about being nervous all the time. I mean, you're going to be nervous maybe, and it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's fine. Most of us are nervous when you go on stage. But it's about already having in mind how you are going to be there from the first second. I mean, but you have to do this before, not when you're on stage, right? Yeah. And sometimes you see people, they have this energy, but the way they come on stage, I mean, it already defines how it's going to be. Because, I mean, people from the very first second when they see you, they will feel your energy. And I'm not esoteric or whatever, but it's true. You see it. And sure.
I was just going to ask, do you teach a warm-up to your clients? Do you give them a warm-up that they can do before they go on stage? Yeah. Where does that come from
and
for
it's
you?
This is more about breathing and stuff like that. But I mean, often I teach this, and then I say at the end, but if you have the possibility to be in your car or wherever, and you can sing, singing is a great way to warm up your voice. I mean, you can do all these weird exercises, which are really funny when they find you in the toilet doing this kind of stuff because you can't do it anywhere else. But I mean, it's a great way. And it's also, I mean, just put some music, put your best music, your favorite music, and then just sing. And that's a great way to get into the mood. And I love that. And if you can't sing, at least you can listen to the music also. It's the same.
Yeah.
Right.
And it'll pump you up and get you ready. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this is missing sometimes, or often enough, when we see speakers, especially in business, where we are also serious, right? And okay.
One thing I want to say.
Sorry. Yeah.
I just want to say one point on that last thing is.
Absolutely.
You know what it feels like when you're in the audience and you've been listening to like 3 Zoom presentations and you're just like, oh, and then somebody comes on and goes, "Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks Dave for that thing. That was really funny when you mentioned the dog, and everybody, sorry." And somebody just has a bit of personality, a bit of energy.
Absolutely.
It's like a breath of fresh air. It doesn't mean you have to be fake. It doesn't mean you have to like do a song and dance, but just the effort to show that, okay, this talk is going to be easier to listen to. It's hard to listen to a boring talk. When you speak with dull energy, you are making your audience work hard, and they will not like you for it. And if you make them do less work by giving them energy, they will love you for it.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny when you see it. The other day I was coaching a CEO, and we were working on his presentation and stuff, and then he remembered some conference and said, but there are these normal presentations, and after just one minute you say, oh God, not another presentation, not again. And then I told him, and I mean, you are also a victim, so make it better, right? Yeah. But this is the thing, we are all victims of bad presentations. So that's also my motivation, actually. It's one of my motivations to have less people suffer from bad presentations, right?
It's a global epidemic. Yeah.
Another one. But it's not. It's harder than COVID. It seems harder to
Yeah,
beat.
much
But
less
yeah,
deadly and
we're
dangerous,
working on
but
that.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. But it takes away your lifetime too. So right. Okay. So give me something controversial, Will. What do you think is a piece of popular speaking advice you totally disagree with?
There's so many. But
Uh,
I
pick,
think
one message, one message.
I think for a long time I used to say this, and I realize it's not true. Um, but a lot of people think, and you and I have talked about Toastmasters, and this is my problem with
Okay.
Toastmasters, is a lot of
Okay.
people think that it's not what you say that matters, it's how you say it. And I've
Okay.
learned over time that I
Yeah.
don't believe that anymore. Even if I
Yeah.
did believe it at one time,
Yeah.
what I noticed in my career is I started my coaching career as a delivery skills coach. So my job was to come
Yes.
into people who already had their presentations written, who just needed help
Mhm.
bringing them to life. And that was great, and that helped a lot of people. For we would work with science students who were pitching for like $2 million worth of research funding. I was working with tech
Yes.
entrepreneurs for years and years to help them raise millions of dollars from investors, and it worked. It helped them get more money. So great. That it definitely has a lot of value to teach people to speak better, regardless of what they're saying.
Of course. Of
But
course.
whenever I kept working with people, what I noticed as the coaches, we never really turned the corner until we got into their content, and then that
Mm.
got made it a bit better. And then we never really,
Yes.
really made the transformation until we got into their why, their personal story, their reason for what they're talking about. So that's why I said
Yes.
I start with the 3 act origin story when the speaker, because it just lets the audience know I actually give a shit about this, and here's why. And here's who I am as a human being, a window into my life and my
Mhm.
experience. And it just creates that connection. And so my issue with some speaking coaches, some chapters of Toastmaster, maybe not all. I think as you and a lot of people said on that post, Europe does seem to be a
Mhm.
bit better in terms of the way the focus of like I find
Yeah.
in the US and Canada when I see a speaker come from Toastmasters, they're very fake. It's very performative, and it's like look how
Yeah.
good I can speak versus
Okay.
here's something I just have to tell you because I care about it so
Yes.
much, and
Yeah.
that energy is
Yeah, I
completely
understand that.
different. Yeah. And so
Yes.
what I really disagree with from what I see sometime is the idea that the most important thing is not your personal story. And obviously there's people who agree with me. Simon Sinek with his book Start With Why, that was a big inspiration for me.
Sure.
And Mark LaRouste, who wrote the book Glow in the Dark, who's an amazing person and also a great follow on LinkedIn. There are people doing this work who go, digging into your personal story is the way to become not a
Yeah.
good speaker, but a great speaker. Because once you are tapped
Exactly.
into your purpose, then it flows so much more naturally. You'll find real energy, real enthusiasm, not like that you have to kind of tell yourself to do, but that naturally bubbles up from inside you because of your passion for the topic. That's how
Yeah.
I've become a better speaker. That's how I feel like I've helped my clients the most. So I would say that the personal story that tells you about your personal why is the best thing you can do to become a great speaker. And you may as well
Absolutely.
start.
I totally
You may
agree
as well
with
start
that,
now.
actually. I mean, I started with Toastmaster as one of my first steps in public speaking, and it's not all performance. I mean, it's also the structure of your speech, storytelling. There are a lot of aspects to it. It's what I do also in my coaching. I start with the structure. I start with the speech itself, the content. And of course,
Yeah.
I mean, the content can change. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
you have a presentation, sometimes you have a pitch, sometimes you have a motivational speech. But at the end of the day, there's a structure you can use. And sometimes you have to
Yes.
vary it, but at the end of the day, first work on that content And it has to be your content, as you say, because when you start telling other stories or some weird stories you just made up, yeah, to sound cool, then it doesn't work because it's fake. And it's the
It's
same
not your
thing. And you
thing.
don't have exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And this is where it starts. And then of course on top there comes the performance, as you said. I mean, have
Yes.
a look at your
And
filler words a little bit, maintain eye contact, all that stuff. It's
yeah,
important, but it
it is
won't save
important.
you. It
Yeah,
won't save you. It
exactly.
won't save you if
It
you have a bad speech. Yeah.
exactly. I think I don't know who wrote this, but I agree with it. Is that like um, mediocre performance with great content will be better than great performance with mediocre content. So,
Yeah.
but I even go a step before content, which is personal story. And it's why are you standing up here saying this to the audience? If they don't understand
Yeah.
that, they're just going to be doing this psychologically with you until they know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
You know,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
works for salespeople. It works for leaders giving a speech. It works for entrepreneurs pitching. It works for marketers.
It
It
works
works
in
for
a
people
personal
at networking
conversation.
events, personal conversation,
Exactly.
networking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why you? Why this? Why? That's what we want
Exactly.
to know.
Yeah.
Even if we're not
Exactly.
thinking that in our head. And then the second somebody goes, yeah, I grew up in a small town, and I always, felt like I needed something more. And then one day I got this opportunity to go to the United States for an internship, and it opened my eyes to the world of marketing. And then, so I decided to, all of a sudden we're just like, oh, okay. I get you. I get where you're coming from. I know some stuff about you. You've let me into your life a little bit. And so
Yeah.
that's to me is what I'm most interested now is going all the way back before delivery, before
Yeah.
stagecraft, before the warm up,
Yeah.
before the structure, before the writing, before the slides. Who are
Yeah.
you and why are you talking about this?
Yeah.
That to
Yeah.
me is
That's
the
the
most
most
important thing.
interesting. That's the most interesting thing. I mean, we are interested in human stories, and
Yeah.
all those stories are original because we are all individuals, and it's every time it's another story, and it's only the story you can tell that story. And that's
Yeah.
why it works. That's
Exactly.
why it works.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, we have to wrap up, but I need to ask you something. I'm a big fan of your LinkedIn posts. Do you plan them? Do you have a LinkedIn strategy? I guess you have a strategy, but I mean, I like them because they seem so spontaneous, but on the other hand, well crafted. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I don't batch write. Like, a lot of writers will say, or LinkedIn creators will say they batch create content.
Yeah.
So they do it all on Sunday
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then schedule it throughout the week.
Yeah, I know, I know.
I don't work well like that. And so I just set aside time every morning. I could be a bit more diligent about this, but as I just got diagnosed yesterday, I have ADHD. So that's, diligence is not exactly my strong
Okay.
point. But I appreciate, I work best when I can be spontaneous. And so it should be something that I know people in my audience want to know about or would help them or would somehow be useful and valuable to read about. And I've learned enough about structure and storytelling and copywriting that I can kind of fire it off in 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how long or complex it is. But yeah. And so then what I do is I try to write it, and then I try to give it like 5 minutes, and then I just go back and try to read it a little bit fresh. I think it's really important for people to, I'm a huge fan of writing as a way for speakers to become better speakers. I think if you become a better writer, you'll become a better speaker. And part of the way to become a better writer is to give yourself time to edit your own work. The more you edit your own work, the more you get into the reader's head and see your words from someone else's perspective. And the more space you have, the better you are at that. And so 5 minutes is not great, but at least it's a bit of distance from your own work. And then you read it and go, I don't need that many words, or this point is a bit confusing, or this bit doesn't flow into the next bit so well. And then you can just kind of do that. And then I just kind of tweak it and then go.
Cool.
And then,
Cool.
But I do have a strategy, which is I try to educate people about my workshops and my coaching thing.
No, of course.
And the point of the way that I do that is by tackling the problems that people tell me they have with those two things. How do I find paid speaking gigs? How do I tell my story? How do I build a speaking career? Those are the main problems people seem to ask me about. So that's what I try to talk about. And so I go, if I can help you tell your story better, if I can help you find paid gigs, and if I can help you build your speaking career, then that's what I'm trying to do. And then also showcase my journey to do that, which hopefully helps you.
That's why it's so important to do a Q&A, because that's where you get your topics for LinkedIn posts.
Totally.
Right?
Sales calls too. So I don't know if you record your sales calls. Do you record them with a transcriber?
No, I don't. Actually, I don't. But maybe it would be a good idea.
So
but I write things down afterwards. Yeah.
Yes, that's good. That's good. So I hate AI for writing. I think it's probably one of the worst things you could possibly use it for, because it's so important for your own brain to do that work. That's what I believe. Yes. But for transcribing a call that you have, it's so useful, because for me, my brain is
absolutely
the way that it is. I will forget what I said I would do how I would follow up, but I'll also forget all the things they said to me and all the things I said to them. So I just go back and I read it and I go, man, that was such a great thing. So somebody said to me yesterday, my wife wants me to have an extra income source. That was their reason for public speaking. What a great, unique, specific motivation, right? So I can do that can be my next newsletter, my next LinkedIn post is, okay, so your wife wants you, or your spouse wants you to have an extra income source, and you think it might be from public speaking. Here's what you do, and then it's so specific and it comes from a real person. So, I love that. And the other thing I do is every time I get a new newsletter subscriber, and they say hi, because I have a little email that says say hi to increase deliverability. I send them an email back saying, hey, so glad to have you. Is there any topic you're particularly interested in learning or reading about? Let me know, and I'll make it the topic of one of my future newsletters. And I've gotten such great ideas from that. So whatever data you can gather from your audience, whether it's on LinkedIn, on your newsletter, on your sales calls, or in your workshops themselves, it's just gold. It's I feel like you must be good at that, because your posts are always spot on.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yours too. Okay, well, tell me, where can people find you?
So the best is probably LinkedIn. That has the links to all my other stuff. So at Will Greenblatt, LinkedIn / whatever, Will Greenblatt. We can maybe put the link on the show notes.
Of course,
from there,
we'll put everything there. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. And then from there, you can find my newsletter, the Green Blast, which I send out every week. And it's always about, finding paid speaking gigs, becoming a better speaker and storyteller. And then I have a link to book a call with me if you want to buy an hour of my time. It's $300, and we do a whole speaking strategy that basically launches your speaking career. We can get so much done in 60 minutes. It's pretty awesome. And it's a great way for people who are stuck or who want to start their speaking career to just launch into it. And then what's the other thing? Oh yeah, I have a community. Forgot about that. It's called Coaches Who Speak. And it's all about helping coaches who want to add that extra income and that extra lead generation pathway by creating their signature workshop. And so it's not my one-on-one program, but it is a place where everybody's kind of doing the same thing. We're all working on building out our signature workshop and getting more speaking gigs. And so we meet every 2 weeks and we work on that together.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds great. We will put everything in the show notes. As you said, Will, it was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your wisdom. And to everybody who's listening, as a coach, as a leader, just do yourself a favor and follow Will on LinkedIn, and then follow all the other links we're going to put there. Thank you, Will. See you on LinkedIn next time.
Yes. Thanks, Wolfgang.
And everybody
I hope to see you
who's listening
in Spain.
Yeah, you have to come to Spain, man. I mean,
it's been a while.
Sure.
I lived there. Yeah, I lived there in my 20s, so I want to be back.
Okay, then you're going to be back. We can meet in Barcelona. I love Barcelona. So
okay,
and
my
to everybody who's listening, see you next time. And remember, use your voice because it's powerful.